Going on now with our discussion this evening about Yoga Explained. And last time we discussed the centers of energy, if you remember, in the spinal cord, or especially the deep spine. And you remember that every chakra, or every center of energy, gives off a vibration, which through the intuition of the soul you can perceive and understand. It's like you have gone by, for instance, a substation of San Diego Gas and Electric, and you'll hear the whir of the generating motor. So within us are those sounds corresponding to the electrical impulse, or rather astral or spiritual impulse, which goes out from the different chakras within us, the different centers of the spine. And you'll remember that those centers of energy have the different sounds of the P sound, flute sound, stringed instrument sound, bell sound, and then the cosmic sound of Om, in varying degrees. And so, as you practice your yoga, especially the pranayama of Kriya Yoga, or the other techniques of self-realization, fellowship yoga, you will be able to know something about the inner part of yourself, the spiritual part of your being. That's why yoga is necessary. As we said in our prayer, we are not only just playing our part here in this drama of life, we are children of God. And if we just play our part forgetting Him and forgetting the spiritual part of us or side of us, we have missed the greatest thing in life. That's why yoga is so important and so necessary. Yoga simply means union, not some mysterious play or some mysterious exercise that you do, but something that will help you unite yourself with the presence of God within. And so these centers of energy are the presence of God as the subtle energy within us, not perceivable by the senses, mind, or intellect, but perceivable through the soul's power, or feeling of the soul, the great intuitive feeling of God within us. That's why it says in the Scripture, when you pray, enter into your closet, shut the door of the senses, and in the stillness within, through the power of your own soul, you can feel the presence of God in these various places of which we talked about last time, the different centers of energy within us. Also, just to remember one or two things, that the sixth center, or the Medulla center, is the mouth of God spoken of in the Scriptures. Thou shalt not live by bread alone, but every word that proceedeth from the mouth of God. That is, every word means the cosmic energy which comes in through the Medulla center and goes throughout your astral being, and then is congregated in these definite places of the chakras in the spine, and then distributed throughout your astral being or subtle being, finally to be used as you do in this particular body. So, behind the physical is the spiritual or astral. And through yoga you can, by the grace of God, realize some of these things. And all, with a little practice, can see the reflection of the Medulla center right here as the spiritual eye, the mouth of God. And those who have seen it know. It has the two wings, the dove descending from heaven, the outer ring of vibrating energy, the dark center of Christ consciousness, and in the center of the dark center, a little star, five-pointed star, which is the epitome of cosmic consciousness, God the Father, showing that we are made in His image. Let us not forget that. So there are one or two things about the chakras. And of course, the supreme center is in the brain, called the thousand-petal lotus. That's the great storehouse of cosmic energy within us as life force, and that's distributed throughout the body, the astral body first, and then the physical body secondly. So just one or two things to remember from last week's talk, and let us go on now tonight with the subtle electric nerves within us. Just as in this body we have nerves, I guess you'll all agree with that. Sometimes they get rather jumpy. Well, they're burned out, that's all. They're burned out with too much stimulation of emotion, anger, and such things. Too much current. You overload the nerves, and you know what you suffer. But by the practice of yoga, especially pranayama or kriya yoga, what happens? The life force in those nerves is kept in a harmonious condition. The flow is harmonious. And if you keep at it, the nerves will heal up. That is, the irritation of the nerves will heal. And you'll feel, once again, as you should feel, a child of God, not a child of emotion and likes and dislikes and those things which keep us on edge all the time. So yoga is very necessary and very important. So these subtle electric nerves are a part of the astral body or the spiritual body, just as we have in the physical body the nerves, so in the astral body we have nerves. And there are three main nerves, so to speak. Like in the physical body, we have the cerebrospinal axis, which is the brain and spinal cord, plus the sympathetic nervous system, and finally a good many nerves that run all over our bodies, causing the function to go on. So in the spiritual body we have three main nerves. We have the brain in the physical body. We also have the astral brain. The counterpart of the astral brain is the physical brain. And we have the spinal cord, of which we spoke last time. You know, the 7 golden candlesticks. On the top was the bowl corresponding to the supreme center of the brain. That's the astral cord. The astral brain and cord. Just like you have a physical, so you have an astral brain and spinal cord. Just like in the physical you have the spinal cord in the middle of the vertebra, so in the spiritual you have the spinal cord corresponding to the spinal axis of the physical nervous system. Now, in the astral nervous system, there are three main nerves. And the first is called the Susumna. S-U-S-U-M-H-A. Susumna. That's a Sanskrit word. And that corresponds to the same tube which you use, those of you who have had the Kriya Yoga, that's what you use. That's the main astral nerve running in the center of the physical spinal cord. That's as near as we can locate it, in the little central canal of the physical cord. In that, although the size doesn't mean anything, because the spiritual things are much different and cannot be measured by physical means, but in that little spinal cord in your spinal canal, central canal in your spinal cord, is this main spiritual subtle nerve, or astral nerve, called the Susumna. But in that Susumna, we find the passage which leads to God within us, in the supreme center of the brain. That's why I said that's the supreme nerve of the spiritual or astral body. Now, besides that, we have two other main nerves on each side of this central Susumna, or on each side of the spinal cord in the physical body. And that's made up in the physical body of a series of little ganglia on each side, but in the spiritual body it's made up of subtle spiritual currents. The Ira and Pingala, I-D-A and P-I-N-G-A-L-A. Ira, the D is pronounced Ira, and Pingala. Some call it Ida. Well, it's all right. It's the same thing, one on the left and one on the right. So those three are the main spiritual, spinal, or astral nerves. The Susumna, and the era and pingular currents. The sushumna, remember, corresponds to the central nervous system, the cerebrospinal axis of the physical body. The era and pingle correspond to the sympathetic nervous system. And from this spinal cord and the sympathetic nervous system are the spiritual branches that go throughout our spiritual body or astral body, causing it to function as it should. Now, if there's something wrong with your astral body, and the current is not flowing as it should, then just as you have sickness in the physical body, you have sickness in the astral body. Yoga will remedy that. The performance of yoga, by the different techniques which some of you know, will cause the life force to once more flow harmoniously in these three currents of which I have spoken, especially in the era and pingular current. Therefore, that is why Kriya Yoga is so important, because you have the ways right within yourself, ways and means, whereby you can not only heal the physical body, but you can also cause the spiritual body to operate in a harmonious way, as it should, by the practice of the higher techniques of yoga. Yoga is important, not only Hatha Yoga, which has to do with the body, but especially that which has to do with the astral body and the causal body, which are deep within the physical. Now, these different currents in these three nerves are very important. That is, the different spiritual currents in these three nerves are very important. That the amount of current flowing in the sympathetic nervous system of the spiritual side, the era and pingular current, determines your bodily health. Now, through yoga you can cause it to flow in a harmonious way. The current in the subtle sushumna determines your spiritual power. Because in that sushumna, that tube, astral tube, are found the chakras of the spine, centers of spiritual energy, and also in the common center of the tube which runs up is called the space wherein in your deep meditation you go. At night in sleep you go there anyway. And that's called the Brahmanari, the nerve to Brahma. That's where we go to attain freedom for our soul. You know, Emerson wrote about a little piece in, I think it was the Atlantic Monthly, years ago, and he spoke about Brahma. Well, everybody threw up their hands. They didn't know what Brahma meant. So he said, we'll just substitute Jehovah, and everything will be fine. Same thing. Jehovah of our Bible, Brahma of the Vedas. So, yoga is very important, especially when we realize that behind the physical is the astral, or spiritual part of us, more important than the physical. And if that is not operating as it should, if that is not in harmony with the presence of God within, how can the physical be? That's why yoga is so important. Now, going on just a little bit. While we're waiting, one thing is very important, which I have observed, and that is, speaking of this sushumna, the main nerve of the spiritual body, the era and pingula, the right and left, subtle era and pingula, empty in through the spiritual eye into the sushumna deep within, and they go down various distances and then end, so that the sushumna is a tube with two tubes within it, and in the common center is the Brahmanara. Now, a cross-section of the spiritual eye, those of you who have seen it, the outer ring of vibrating energy, the direct center, plus the little star in the middle. There's a cross-section. If you cut the sushumna, you'll have the same cross-section where these three tubes end. And in the common center is the little star of the Brahmanara, showing that not only in the spiritual eye is that triune consciousness. A triune consciousness that we see there, but also in the subtle spine are those three elements of the outer vibrating ring of energy, the darker center of God's consciousness throughout creation, and in the little center is the Brahmanari, or the epitome of cosmic consciousness. That's how we go to God, through that Sushumna. Why? Because God's consciousness is there as the Brahmanari, the nerve of Brahma, that means. And as you unite your consciousness with that, through the various exercises of yoga, especially Kriya Yoga, you come up to the supreme center of the brain, where God and His angels dwell. So it's very interesting to those who are interested in the deep teachings of yoga to realize this one thing. The cross-section is the same. The three elements, the outer vibrating ring of energy, the dark center of God's consciousness as the Christ consciousness throughout creation. And finally, in the little center is the star, the epitome of cosmic consciousness, God the Father. That's why the Brahmanari is so important. And by following that through the practice of yoga, first gathering your attention from being attached to this bodily vehicle, through concentration, through the highest technique of concentration which we give in Self-Realization Fellowship Yoga. By that we break the attention from attachment to the body. Then, having broken that, then we can apply that liberated attention where we will. Concentration is very important. And one of the greatest techniques of yoga is that of concentration. Then we can apply that concentration on these deep things within and attain freedom for the soul. And these things are very, very important. And yoga is not to be sneered at, so to speak, or thought something mysterious or very foreign. It is right within us, and it can be attained by everyone. And so, realize that through yoga, the cosmic consciousness of God and His great cosmic energy, which is distributed throughout us and has become attached, we have to free that, free our attention from attachment to the body, and then take it step by step, first to the sympathetic nervous system or the ear and pingula, then up to the spiritual eye deep within to the Sushumna, and then up once more by the grace of God, emerge in His presence and be free. In a few words, that's why yoga is so important. Now, I have a few references which I think you'll enjoy. First from the Bible in Zechariah. I have to take them up just briefly, superficially, but it'll give you something to think about. Zechariah, the 4th chapter, the 2nd verse. What seest thou? Said the angel which came to Zechariah. What seest thou? And I said, I have looked, and behold, a candlestick all of gold. That's the Sushumna. With a bowl on top, that's the supreme center of the brain, and the 7 golden candlesticks are the complete centers from the brain to the coccyx, 7 of them, spoken of right in Zechariah. And then he goes on, what be these 2 olive trees by the side? Why they call them olive trees, I don't know. It's rather difficult to understand the terminology, but we read the 2 olive trees by the side, one on the right side of the bowl and one on the left side. This refers to those 2 currents of which we have spoken, the Era and Pingala currents. Also in Revelation, the 11th chapter, the 4th verse, you will find reference to the same 2 olive trees. Now, in the 11th and 12th verse of this 4th chapter of Zechariah, we read, once again it speaks of the olive trees on the right and left side of the candlestick. And the angel said unto him, or he asked, what are these two olive trees? Then the angel said, these are the two anointed ones which stand by the Lord of the whole earth. The anointed ones mean those are the tubes which receive the subtle energy which keeps the body, earth refers to body, in proper health, because the life force is in them, and they empty into the susumna spoken of in the 12th chapter. What be these two olive branches, which through the two golden pipes empty the golden oil out of themselves? Oil in Sanskrit means energy. Oil and energy are the same. And so, that empty the golden oil out of themselves means to empty the spiritual energy. As the spiritual energy within us is gold in color, as you see the spiritual eye, the real spiritual eye, the outer ring will be of gold. So the golden oil refers to the spiritual energy, which is found in these two important nerves on the right and left side of the susumna, or the golden candlestick. In a few words, that's the gist of Zechariah. Read it, study it, meditate upon it, and you will find it will answer all your questions. Now, from the autobiography of the yogi, page 247, we have also a reference about the importance of doing your yoga, doing your Kriya Yoga. Life passes away and you haven't accomplished. Why? Because you didn't do it. That's all. Do it. Make up your mind every day. Don't let a day go by. And then, one day you'll see the Lord face to face. But if you don't do it, I doubt if you will. So in the Master's autobiography, which is the epitome of Hindu philosophy, page 247, we read, the Holy Scriptures aver that man requires 1,000,000 years of normal, diseaseless evolution to perfect his human brain sufficiently to express cosmic consciousness. 1,000,000 years, think of it. But even in the course of one lifetime, if you sincerely want God and practice your yoga, especially the Kriya Yoga, you can attain freedom. Now, it's worth doing it, rather than just listening to someone tell about it. Get busy. Let's do it. And then one other place on the same page. And people say, well, I don't seem to be getting anything. I do my Kriya, but I don't seem to be getting anything. Well, they don't realize what they're trying to do. But right here we read what you were trying to do. The body of the average man is like a 50-watt lamp which cannot accommodate the 1,000,000,000 watts of power. 1,000,000,000 watts of power aroused by an excessive practice of Kriya. Unless we took it little by little, we'd be burned up with that 1,000,000,000 watts of power. But little by little, you won't notice it until finally one day you will see and know the presence of the Infinite Father. And so, through gradual and regular increase of the simple and foolproof methods of Kriya, man's body becomes astrally transformed day by day and is finally fitted to express the infinite potential of cosmic energy, the first materially active expression of spirit. That's why it doesn't come as easy as we think it should. But if you keep at it, it will come. So, aver all the saints in the Scriptures that it can be done. Also, from the Hindu philosophy, another reference as follows. The source is the supreme consciousness beyond the objective, subjective, and causal world. The supreme consciousness of God the Father be on this world, beyond the astral world of which we have been talking, and finally beyond the causal world, which God used when he made creation. God first created heaven and earth, and they were without form and void. He created them in thought first. And so behind that, beyond that, is the supreme consciousness of God the Father. Supreme yoga experience and liberation is attained by passing beyond these three states of consciousness. The yoga process is a return movement to the source from which we have come, which is the reverse of the creative movement therefrom. We came from God, from His light and His love. He has made all things from that, including you and including me. We reverse the current and let it carry us back to God. Alone He can do it. We cannot force it. But His mercy endureth forever, and His love is supreme. And I know He loves each and every one of us if we but just turn to Him. Finally, find Him. One other reference for inspiration from the great Guru Nanak, which I have read several times. God is not comprehensible by the mind. That's the worst battle as you sit to do your yoga. You sit there and you feel calm, and then suddenly the battle begins. On one side are the thoughts and the emotions and the various things that you have brought over or you have learned in this life. And they have to be pushed aside. On the other side is the peace and bliss of God. So wonderful. But can you keep it? That's the battle. That's why the grace of God must come finally to win this battle. So in Guru Nanak we read, lacks of regions, beneath the regions there are, and firmaments above the firmament. That's how great God is. How can we expect to comprehend Him? By the mind, it's impossible. Man has attempted to trace the limits, but got weary of the search, even to find out how big God is. The Vedas, the Holy Scriptures, proclaim but this one fact. Even Lord Shankara said, all I can say is God is. Yet we, by our mind, expect to know God. He's incomprehensible through mental functions and faculties. And it goes on a little more. 18,000 worlds, say the sacred books of the Muslims and others. But the origin of emanation is but one. If His creation alloweth of counting, then countest it. Thy end will come while still counting. That's how great God is. It is that which brings humbleness to people and to devotees, humbleness which is so necessary for the grace of God to filter in. Remember always the words of Lord Shankara, all I can say is that God is. But if you know that, the bliss which you feel will offset all time elements. Emerson said that the soul knows that eventually it is going to find God. Even if it takes 1,000 years, it will gladly accept that. That's how great God is. The next time I have a note here that we will discuss the sleeping spiritual consciousness at the base of the spine. That is the consciousness of the different centers. We've taken up the energy there. The consciousness is another aspect, especially that storehouse of energy at the base of the spine spoken of in the Scriptures and known to many people as the Kundalini power. Very interesting. We'll take that up next time.